Welcome to our webinar. I'm your host today. My name is Marco Trottmann. So we're gonna start right on time. And before we get going, I want to quickly introduce our panel today. Again, on myself, my name is Marco Trottmann. I'm responsible for our warehousing practice here at Westernacher. And today I'm gonna be joined by my colleagues Shen Shi, who's a director and industry principal for the pharmaceutical industry. He's, like myself, based in the United States. Then we have Mevin, who's one of our warehousing solution architects. Mevin is based in Dubai. We have Pradeep, who's also working here in the US as one of our solution architects. And then we have Jörg Michaelis, the vice president and chief product owner of EWM, who's joining us today from Germany. So before we get started, I just want to give a very brief introduction about Westernacher, who we are, where we are. So as you can see here, we are a global consulting company. We're focused on the digital supply chain with SAP. We have been in the market for more than 50 years now. We've been founded 1969. Our global headquarters are in Germany, in Heidelberg, but our consulting team has a global presence with about 650 consultants right now, and 170 of these are focused only on SAP's warehousing solutions. One fact I want to highlight is we're 100% employee owned, and we're very proud of that fact. And we're a long-time SAP partner, means we have been active for the last 20-30 years in that space, and have always been innovating together with SAP and try to be first in new solutions coming out and help our customers optimize business and IT. So today's webinar will be the digitalization of pharmaceutical distribution. We put together a roundtable of our experts to give you valuable insights, lessons learned from some case studies, and then also an outlook into the future of EWM, specifically for this industry. Here's a quick look at the agenda. So we will start off with some key innovation drivers in the industry that we've observed. Then we will introduce our two case studies that we will be talking about today, CSL Behring and Alkmaar. We will have our panel discussion where we dig a little deeper into the case studies and into some of these innovation driver topics. Then Jörg will provide an update on the future of SAP, and at the very end, we will have some time to address some questions from the audience. Then with that, we will conclude today's session. So for the introduction, let's quickly look at what are key innovation drivers in the industry today that we observe. The pharmaceutical industry is in a constant change. There's a constant progression, and there's right now three things we've observed that drive innovations and investments there. One is end-to-end traceability. Then we have quality management, comprehensive quality management, and then we have automation into areas, process automation, and then also mechanical automation. Yeah? So that means in terms of warehousing, physical movements automation. If you look at end-to-end traceability, of course, one of the key drivers is government regulations that come into power across the world. There's regulations to have serialization on a product single each level. So that means across the world over the past few years, companies are forced to be able to provide insights for every single step from production until the product reaches end customers, track it, trace it, and report if there's any problems, call it back. And of course, that has led many companies to invest in that area and digitalize also that part to make sure that at any point in time they can answer questions and in case something goes wrong, trace where the products are and call them back. Then we have another area where we see application of IoT products this cold chain management in many of the pharmaceutical companies. We have a cold chain, and we see an increasing in leveraging IoT devices to constantly monitor that the cold chain is not breached, and then get live alerts if anything happens in the supply chain. That can be, again, for raw materials, but then also sending out finished goods to distributors, and then towards the resellers, the end customers. We have digital process traceability that basically ties all these things together. So there's a force towards leveraging a digital platform that is fully integrated, seamlessly integrated, to have all this information at hand at any point in time, and also, of course, report any events back in real time at any point in the supply chain. And of course, this includes then also 3PLs. So a lot of companies work with 3PLs, and all these requirements, of course, extend to the warehouses that are managed by 3PLs. So there's also a need to provide a digital platform and to provide this functionality across the board, not only for your own warehouses, but for everything else where you might have external partners managing that. Then the next section is quality management. That goes from simple to comprehensive batch management, from production until in a warehousing context, storing the batches and then guaranteeing remaining shelf life, selecting certain batches in the warehousing processes, to full process integration then with quality management. So here we see a force to have all systems, all process steps in the supply chain more connected. So manufacturing and warehousing need to be tightly integrated, because there's quality checks along that process chain. So we might have an initial quality check in production, but then we have another one, a recurring quality check in the warehouse, and all that information, of course, should flow together into one quality management system where everything is documented, recorded, and if anything goes wrong, again, we can take action. All the systems are informed and can immediately update product status, so it's not being sent out if it's not at target quality. That now also includes lab systems. So we have tests. We might want to feed information back from these lab systems, or vice versa. We might have information in the warehousing system, for example, that the lab systems need. So there's also need for digital integration here and exchanging this information. And as I mentioned, flexible inspection processes. As our customers increase their quality standards, there's a need for more inspection, recurring inspections, spot inspections in the warehouse, and of course all the solutions that are used need to support these different processes, and again have the integration to collect all the information in one place. The last area is automation, and that's a global trend that we see not only in the pharmaceutical industry. So as it's more challenging to have a workforce that is educated and cost effective, a lot of companies are investing in mechanical automation, material flow systems, and especially as you can see now in the COVID crisis, be more independent of human workers, to work alongside with human workers and help them to take over the transportation of goods in the warehousing environments. Then we see robotic process automation, which basically deals with also on a now not mechanical but a system level, to take over mundane tasks where the system can actually support with data entry, with checks. So there's machine learning and AI utilized to help the humans to make better decisions or just take over some tasks that can be automated. In terms of actual mechanical warehouse automation, we see an emergence of robotics. So away from classical automation with conveyors and highway systems, we see a lot of innovation in the area of robotics, autonomous robots that can then also scale up and down to enable automation at a lower cost and at a faster pace. And to tie all this together with IoT and the digital cloud, we see a lot of data being generated, and that data then can be utilized, also coming out of all these automation systems, to have a preventative maintenance system where we know that components, parts might fail, and then have maintenance coming in before it actually fails, to have no interruptions in your production and warehousing processes. So with that, I want to quickly ask our colleagues to introduce our case studies. We'll give a brief overview here, and then later in the panel discussion, we will dig a little deeper. First, for CSL, I would ask Pradeep to give a brief overview.
Sure. The first case study for today is from CSL Behring. CSL Behring is a biopharmaceutical company based out of King of Prussia, Philadelphia. They are into manufacturing of plasma-derived pharma products. And about 3 years back, they embarked on a global business transformation journey to make sure that they have standardized their global processes. And they started that with the program called PACE. It was started in the mid of 2017. And this went on for about 2 years, deploying the solution across different sites in the world. One of the main objectives of this program was to standardize their global processes involving order to cash, procure to pay, account reporting, and more importantly, they had a bigger drive to create a global template for their warehousing processes involving EWM, which is an advanced warehouse management solution offering from SAP compared to the previous offering, which is SAP EWM. We started off with 1610 version, and we implemented embedded EWM on S4HANA. And eventually we upgraded to 1809 when we were deploying the last site, which was in Australia. So with that, I would like to talk about the solution overview. When it comes to the three big takeaways from the solution which we implemented in CSL, as I was mentioning earlier, this is a global deployment involving sites from Europe, US, and Australia. So it was important for them to have a harmonized global processes to make sure that they don't have a homegrown local solutions, which is not really following the best practice approach, and also missing the bigger picture in the overall scheme of things. So that was the first takeaway. And then the second one I would say is the enhanced warehouse traceability. They achieved this traceability by integrating EWM with warehouse control systems, and as well the manufacturing execution systems. And not to forget, they eliminated a lot of paper-driven processes with a more systematic approach. And the last and the key aspect of this deployment was the integration of ATTP with EWM in combination with the manufacturing execution system. And this way, CSL was in line to meet the pharma industry guidelines put in place to make sure that everybody's on board with serialization.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Thanks, Marco.
Then for Alkmaar, I would ask my colleague Mavin to give a brief overview.
So today, for the second case study, we have Alkmaar. Alkmaar is a leading hospital and healthcare company in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for more than 4 decades. They import pharmaceutical products and they sell and distribute in the region. As distributors, their vision is to fit for the future and to compete for the opportunities. So to act towards their vision, they had a bigger program. In fact, to migrate their existing landscape to S4HANA, along with implementing EWM in all of their 7 distribution centers. Also, in order to stay compliant with the government's new regulation in the region to eliminate counterfeit, they have implemented SAP ATTP. And Alkmaar is the first customer to implement SAP ATTP in the region, and they've gone live big bang with all these implementations on the same day in October last year. So the landscape there was SAP S/4HANA 1809, which was on HIC, HANA Enterprise Cloud, with embedded EWM and ATTP 2.0. And I would like you to I'd like you to highlight few implementation points here, which, which we can see in the second slide. Yeah. So, especially for distribution business, we have implemented something called switchable ATTP enablement. This is important for them to actually switch any product to ATTP relevant or non-ATTP relevant. Yeah, and we also have something called vendor batch visibility. This especially for distributors. It is highly important for them to handle both internal batch as well as vendor batch across their warehouse processes. So that has been enabled for them. And in case of lost and found or physical stock take, we have to be aware that ATTP, once it is decommissioned, we cannot commission it again, which means once the stock is mistakenly decommissioned, it is a cost to the company. So to ensure the right stock posted in the system, it requires high accuracy, validation, and right process in place. So apart from that, we have enabled a mixed pallet receiving process, especially for return scenarios, receiving at all levels of unit of measurements, exception handling in all the warehouse processes. And these are some of the highlights in the project, and we can discuss more on a panel discussion in the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mevin. That was great. And now, with these two case studies, and as our colleagues mentioned, the two first implementations, not only regional, but some of the first implementations globally with that setup. Let's maybe dig a little deeper in some areas. So let's get started with our panel discussion. And maybe let's start first with what we introduced, these key challenges. And maybe Shenji, as our industry principal, can you shed a little light on what are specifically challenges that we have seen in our customer base, in our implementations that we have done over the past few years?
Thank you, Marco. Yeah, we have been serving our pharma clients for many years. And over the last few years in particular, we have seen our pharma clients are continuing to working on the line of productivity and also compliance. Yeah, that's probably very particular to the pharma industry. And I think I just want to bring up maybe 4 points here. Yeah, the first is we see that there are lots of initiative continuously reducing the human resource dependency. Yeah, there's certainly also increasing demand also for temperature control logistic end to end. Yeah, and also as we mentioned already in the earlier session, there's a strong demand on the track and trace initiative. And the last point is actually is more recent years we have seen increasing investment actually in the warehouse operations.
So human resource dependencies, I guess that is clear across the industries, right? With raising labor cost and also decreasing the workforce. But maybe help me understand a little better. You say track and trace is very important. We mentioned government regulations, but are there other points to consider here why there's a big investment in this area?
Yeah, correct. I think many companies maybe understand that, okay, this is a compliance requirement, right? US, EU, European Union, China, Brazil have mandated this serialization, right, pretty much by 2018. But actually many of our clients also want to take this opportunity to drive new business values, yeah? Because don't forget that it's about 40 billion every year that, pharma industry is kind of losing against the counterfeiting, right? So all this this market requires very strong traceability through these track and trace solutions, and also inventory optimization across the entire supply chain. Obviously, track and trace provide a much greater details to enable that optimization. Yeah, and on top of that, analytics, right? Big data. we need more enriched KPIs to be able to tell us what's going wrong, but not only that, but also predict what we can do better.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it's actually then a sort of win-win situation with government regulations having better traceability and then avoiding this counterfeiting, which I guess also protects the revenue of the pharma companies. And in addition, they can open new business models. That's very good points. Now, if you look at these challenges and requirements, what have we seen the industry come up with solutions for that? So what kind of innovations do you perceive right now that address these challenges?
Yeah, good question. Basically, I think in the market right now, we have seen three major, let's say, offerings more dedicated to pharma industries. The number one, automation we touched upon already. So that I just want to highlight a little bit here. It's not just the traditional ASIs or this traditional automation. We have been seeing increasing offering on the autonomous mobile robots, that allows, kind of a scale up and down pretty flexibly, and that also offers a little bit additional, kind of financial options, right? Not just the CapEx, could be also OpEx, option for many clients to consider. And the second offering in the market is really around IoT, right? That solves the connectivity and also kind of giving more data sources or real-time data sources. That second group that we have seen very strongly moving up. And the third part is obviously track and trace. Yeah, we have seen all kinds of different track and trace, primarily, standalone and also more integrated one, like SAP.
Okay, now for the IoT platform, I guess connectivity has been around for a while, but what is new in this area that as you say, adds additional tracing or data collection? What are some kind of specific examples that you could think of?
Yeah, obviously, I think this probably can also bridge a little bit into the next around the SAP, right? So SAP has been developing the Leonardo platform for many years. Yeah. Okay. And one of the examples around maybe data collection is the digital twins, right? This is probably the terminology many of you have heard already. So really, we are able to, on SAP Leonardo platform, to be able to mimic what's going on physically, right? There's a digital form of the physical operations, to be able to really give us a lot of data to analyze and simulate, to improve our processes and also to anticipate some of the risk that we probably haven't seen today.
Okay. Now, looking at other in SAP offerings in particular, looking at other solutions that address what we said, automation, IoT, track and trace. What else, if we tie together that portfolio for the pharma industry, what else would you want to highlight here?
Yeah, certainly SAP ATTP solution, right? Which came to the market for quite a few years. Yeah, we are, as Westernacher, one of the early implementer having the actual experience. So I just want to point out that ATTP, SAP actually has chosen a very unique approach to address it, but I think a very good approach is, I think the foremost question for ATTP topic that need to be resolved is really about how we can connect all the participants across the entire supply chain together and to enable them to collaborate, but also kind of keep the data very safe. Yeah, and SAP actually leveraged the blockchain. So more specifically, it's a multi-chain technology. Yeah, to be able to kind of really involve different parties and to have the shared governance on the data. And everybody can really see and contribute, of course, and owning the data and sharing the data on this ATTP platform. Yeah, that is really very smart strategic move into more decentralized architecture in SAP.
Got it. So if I understand correctly, then the advanced track and trace ATTP system sits as a separate solution, but has open APIs to different parties involved and also different systems involved, but is the data concentrator, and as you mentioned, I guess with the digital ledger, the blockchain, we make sure that all this data is tamper-proof, so you cannot once a
That's
record
correct.
has been created, it cannot be tampered with.
Yeah, it's actually extremely kind of, it's almost imperative for the US, right? So that's the difference between US and Europe. So in the US, we don't really have like a centralized sort of data, center, for the serialization. Yeah. So this blockchain is kind of really technology fitting very well in this market.
Okay, very interesting. Now, if we look at a warehousing environment in particular, with leveraging the solutions then that are there, Pradeep, can you help me a little bit understand if we look at the processes in a warehouse? Now, how would you leverage ATTP and EWM as a warehousing solution, and what are typical touch points in the processes that we see?
Sure, Marco. Before we go into the touch points, I want to briefly talk about how the integration happens. Um, as most of us know, with ATTP license, SAP offers a toolbox as an add-on to S4HANA, or in a case of decentral implementation, this toolbox can also work with EWM. So what this toolbox consists of is list of business processes, or it's called as business functions, that could typically happen in a warehousing environment. If I have to give some examples regarding the touch points which you were asking about, take a case where we have a packaging line and they are pushing out pallets into the warehouse for storing. Now, it's important that at the time of the receipt of the pallets into the warehouse, the warehousing system knows that ATTP is already aware of this pallet that's coming to the warehouse. So we first do the validation to ATTP, checking with ATTP if it's okay. Do you know this pallet? And then we let ATTP know as well that we are receiving this pallet. So we are posting an event.
Okay.
Likewise, now this is just an example with receiving. Likewise, every other business processes, let's say typically receiving is followed with put away. We could also do a similar event posting there and validation. And also on an outbound scenario, you could do the same as well for picking, loading, and as well shipping. So that's how those are the most common touch points you could imagine in a normal day-to-day warehousing operations.
Okay, got it. So that means basically from the point of receiving material from production until it's actually shipped out on the road, we have different opportunities to record events. If necessary, we might have repacking where we can record events, and then we have a full traceability within the four walls of the warehouse for any touch point recorded in the system. That's great. Now, if we look at now our two specific use cases and where we have been helping our customers be first globally to leverage these technologies, maybe Mevin, let's talk about Alkmaar first. They certainly leverage these capabilities, but why, can you help us understand a little bit, why was Alkmaar deciding for SAP solutions, or what was the driver in itself for starting that project?
Yeah, sure. And so for Alkamal, as they are venturing into new business as warehouse service providers, especially for pharma products, and also to optimize their distribution in the region, it is highly important for them to equip themselves to handle such large operations, right? So, and also on the other hand, most of their suppliers and customers are going digital to optimize their supply chain, which in turn requires the distributors to be ready to accommodate such requests. Alkamal have to be ready to win more opportunities by increasing their operational capabilities. And they were quite clear that this can happen only with the state of the art products and solutions. And that's where they've decided to go with SAP for the fact that it is flexible, scalable, and highly robust, and also provides seamless integration with all the business processes. That was the key thing they've decided.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, so that means it's not only their own drive for innovation to have better visibility throughout their supply chain, but it's more also outside pressure because of course the manufacturers that we work with, they increase their capabilities, and then the distributor definitely needs to match this. Yeah, and again, as we mentioned, in terms of tracing, they need to make sure that they don't break that chain, so that they also have this digitalization enabled to have a end-to-end traceability enabled. That's very interesting. So, Shenxi, what about CSL? Can we have a little bit of an insight on why they started that project?
Yeah, sure, Marco. So CSL actually is more on the manufacturing side, right? So they have a little bit different view on that. I think it just maybe come to one point is they were running in a more capacity constraint situation. Yeah, basically need to really holistically improve their operations end to end, and they had been investing in manufacturing capabilities for quite some time, and they brought up the manufacturing throughput to a certain level. Then on the logistics side, obviously had to match up with the manufacturing, and that was the I would say the motivation, the biggest strategic motivation for them to come to the SAP EWM platform.
I got it right, because as we, from our understanding, know, SAP provides seamlessly integrated solutions, so it's a natural fit there. And Pradeep, you've been at the front lines there as our solution architect, so maybe help us a little bit, give some valuable lessons learned that our audience here can benefit from this implementation. What are some things that we came across that we saw as a challenge, and maybe tell us a little bit how we addressed these throughout the project?
Sure, Marco. As I was mentioning earlier, CSL Behring, they had operations across different continents. So one of the key aspects which we had to address was to make sure that there are some local regulations which we need to make sure that it is adhered to. For example, if you take from a serialization point of view, in Europe, let's say if I'm issuing a sample for lab or for some other reason, the disposition which we have to use in Europe is different from what we have to use in the US. Yeah, so those kind of differences with disposition to start with, and as well in a much bigger picture, if you talk about ATTP toolbox, which I was mentioning earlier, it's very powerful, and it has got a lot of flexibility in where you could use it. But what we were missing at the beginning was the effort that goes into make sure that we call this toolbox from the areas we would want to. Same example as I was mentioning earlier. If you're receiving a pallet from a packaging line, now if I'm the forklift driver and if I'm going to receive this pallet, I have this RF interface in front of me. So now I have to make sure that while we are building this solution, I have to make sure that through this RF, I could call the ATTP toolbox to talk to ATTP and validate the pallet that's coming out, and as well post the event behind the scene. So these are some of the efforts which we initially didn't perceive, and it was learned with our first deployment, and further on we made sure that we improvised on it. And also taking a little bit of flavor out from serialization, I would also recommend that we should stay away from building a custom or a fancy solution for any gap that comes across, because I could call out some examples from our case study in CSL Behring that as I was mentioning earlier, 1610 was the version we went with. And with pharmaceutical industry, there is a lot of importance given to quality management, and right from retention sampling to in-process inspection in the packaging line. So those kind of features, which was kind of a mandate for the production line, we couldn't achieve it in the first go. So it was important for us at that point in time that we pay a lot of attention to what SAP was doing. So what we eventually figured out was 1809, which was a couple of versions later, that SAP was offering all this in their standard solution. So it's important to keep a watch on what's happening on the SAP Innovation platform, and also have a close watch on the customer influence program that's been going on for a while, where you could get to list the gaps you are facing in your day-to-day businesses, and you get to vote to choose what SAP builds as part of the next version. So these are the things I could easily list as part of the lessons learned, Marco.
Got it. So if I summarize, 2 points we understood. First, for the ATTP integration, don't underestimate the intricacies, because there's complex use cases in terms of not only straightforward processes, but I guess exceptions, reversals, things like this. So you need to have an experienced partner that understands these cases and make sure we don't forget. And the second part was SAP has with S/4HANA solutions now an increased innovation pace. So even if a solution is not there from the beginning, the release cycles are much shorter now, and I guess that is a case for every project. Don't over-engineer things, lead with standard, and then keep a close watch on the innovations that SAP is releasing. Okay, great. Now, Mevin, for Alkmaar, we've seen that the timeline was quite short. So you said this was many warehouses, and you've done this in 7 months. Maybe give us some lessons learned from there in that short timeline. How did you ensure that it actually works out the way it should?
Exactly. So the biggest challenge there was the time, because we started somewhere in the March, and we had to go live in October due to the fact that the government regulation says that they should implement ATTP from the month of October. So we had only 7 months there, yeah, and it's part of a bigger program. So they have to migrate to S4 HANA, and we have to implement EWM and ATTP integration simultaneously. So it requires a lot of detailing during design phase to understand what are the prerequisites for EWM to be implemented from S4 HANA side, and what are the prerequisites for ATTP from EWM side. Because if something goes wrong, it has cascading effect, and the whole program gets spoiled. So it is important to have that expertise, and this is where Westernacher comes into picture. With our previous experience, we have been able to figure out and detail out during the design phase what are the prerequisites required for the dependent module, and we have been able to achieve it with better coordination with the partners, right? Because multiple partners were involved, and I think this is this is one of the biggest lesson we have learned in such a delivery model. Yeah, this is one. And second thing is, I would say change management. The Alkmaar team is pretty small, yeah, and for them to go big bang with all 7 warehouses, with all these implementations is pretty risky. And they had this confidence only because from the beginning, Westernacher supported them in such a way that they can gain confidence to go big bang, go live, because we drove the project from the beginning. Our project design is in such a way that they had that confidence when we started executing it. I think these two are the biggest learning from the project.
Great. I think that's very good insight. So if I summarize again as well, emphasis on change management to make sure that the customer is enabled and able at the end to take over the solution. Then, of course, strong project governance in terms of reaching common milestones, defining them, reaching them, and measuring the progress together with all the partners involved to make sure the project is a success. Now, Shen-Chi, maybe as a closing statement here, can you give us a brief overview how our methodology, our delivery approach helps our customers ensure in these challenging environments that we've seen with complex use cases, complex integrations, or strict timelines, that we still deliver what we promise on time?
Yeah, so Marco, as you mentioned, right, so it really comes down to the delivery methodology. Yeah, so our Q methodology actually Q stands for quality. That's one key topic that a pharma company companies have been focusing on. So we are. I think really for the pharma industries, the cost, let's say, of making mistake is very high. We cannot afford that. Yeah. So for that, I would say I just want to bring 3 points, to kind of elaborate around that. The first one is really a solid solutioning. Yeah. So we heard a lot about agile, very kind of lean kind of design things, but actually, in particular in the supply chain project, which is a solution that is very hands-on, we do want suggest we spend a good enough time to really in the solutioning to really challenge, is that the right processes, right design? That require, of course, a team that comprising of industry knowledge, process know-how, of course, also system expertise. Yeah, that's the first point I want to make. And the second point is during the development phase, we actually see that the benefit of engaging customer, throughout this development phase, as opposed to the kind of way kind of you just do your stuff at your corner. That really to kind of help to build a very fit solution along these processes and making sure that we minimize the reworking afterwards. Okay. And then the third point and the last point is really around the testing and the validation. This is also very particular for the pharma industry. Again, risk of, cost of making mistake is very high. We need to make sure that we plan that very well, have a multiple cycle of testing. Also, of course, engage customer at different levels, to make sure everything is documented and validated before we move on to the next step, which is cut over and go live.
Got it. Great. So in summary, again here, if you go into a challenging project like this, it's certainly beneficial to have a partner that understands the background of your industry, not only the system, has strong industry process knowledge, and then has a mature methodology to deliver these things on time. And as you mentioned, the solutioning and the close feedback loops, I think, are key here to ensure project success in the end. With that, I would want to close our panel discussion. We could go on for hours here. I think there's many more interesting topics to go into depth, but we also want to have a look at the future, the innovation that we were talking about many times today already. And for that, I want to hand it off to Jörg to give us a little bit of an insight into what is planned for EWM in the future and for the pharma industry. So, Jörg, here we go.
Thank you, Marco, and thanks for having me here in the call. And thanks for delivering such good projects here. As we only sell the software, we don't know all the time what the customer is really doing. And these are really great stories. And thank you to the Westernacher team. I'm working in the standard development team at SAP. And as a chief product owner, I'm responsible for the innovations and for the roadmaps of SAP Extended Warehouse Management now for more than 7 years. And I would just like to give you an insight about what we are recently doing, why we believe EWM is a fit for pharma business, and also give you an outlook, what is our plans in the near future, especially what you can expect in 2020 as we are planning another big release at the end of the year. At first, beside of these great stories, the pharma or life science business is accompanying us for a while. We see EWM in different businesses in pharma. I would like to mention this because for many people, a warehouse is not a warehouse. Somebody believes it's a production warehouse, which is supplying components to production. We see EWM in this. In January, I could visit a customer where EWM controlled an automated warehouse and supplied components into an assembly area. One of our first projects in EWM was a project in the clinical research. This is maybe not why the product was built for, but the customer used EWM to store clinical research or trials samples in really fridges and wanted to know where is every piece, and they controlled everything by handling units, cartons, and the position within the tray of the sample. So anonymizing data but still being able to trace it. I really wouldn't say that EWM was built for it, but the customer is using this. We also see EWM around the globe in pharmaceutical wholesale. So after it's produced, it's getting into the supply chain, and by then, whether it's here in Germany, we have an e-commerce customer supplying directly to the consumer, and of course also wholesale delivering to pharmacies and stores, and of course pharmacy in distribution centers, which is also where we see multiple projects. So EWM is used in pharma. Those topics are mentioned from what is relevant in pharma. EWM is used in more than 24 industries, as SAP defines the industries. And many topics are used in many different industries. Looking in pharma, as explained by the colleagues of Westernacher, we see certain topics frequently used. We have an end-to-end batch management. We support all the different batch levels, whether it's plant batches, generic batches, and also with S4HANA. I have to check 1809 or 1909. It's the global batch, which is a unique batch which you can switch off at certain plants if you don't have the equipment. We do have foundations and toolboxes to integrate to SAP Advanced Track and Trace. So serialized products, we don't want to have these on stock and bin level because you only need them when you confirm. And to get a high throughput, those data are kept outside. Beside of using a batch inside the warehouse, we also connect to SAP Global Batch Tracing, GBT. The big advantage is here, EWM tracks inside a warehouse, GBT tracks over the supply chain. So you can even connect multiple systems, multiple EWM, ERP, or non-SAP systems. Not to forget, SAP comes EWM with an end-to-end handling units, whether it's the pallet just mentioned, whether it's the nested pallet, so a carton on a pallet, and multi-level is fully supported from day on. And one of the key strengths rated by the analyst is our ability to connect with the PLC, control automated warehouses. 1 year back, we have introduced a tool which is called Cloud Robotics, which is on a GitHub. So everybody can download and deploy robotic integration as a GitHub project and connected to even very low EWM releases. We will also further invest here on these topics. And not to forget, also mentioned here, deep integration into quality management. And I can tell you, we do spend a lot of development money to foster the integration to other SAP areas. Quality management is, for the last 7 years, I am doing this job, a key, and in every release, we are enhancing the product in this area, and also in this year, you will find a big step in the area of quality management. Just giving you some recent highlights. S4HANA 1909 stands for the 2019 release, released in September. Multiple customers on it already. And I just want to take you through the headlines. User experience is very clear. In SAP, it means Fiori. Fiori means we introduce new apps, we enhance our existing apps, and just some of them are highlighted here. Pack warehouse stock. For warehouse internal repacking, we introduced with 1809 outbound packing. Integration. With the 2019 release, you can use quality management without inspection rules. We just make use of the quality master data. This is just one. And we did a big innovation in the area of production operations, which we also heard from CSL here. Harmonizing master data, more integrating business objects was one key in 2019, and you will also see this in the 2020. Some innovations. We introduced CDS Analytics, which is core data service. It makes use of SAP HANA, and we provide out-of-the-box analytics, an overview page with drill down, and with the CDS views, you can model your own KPIs, and you can also access the data from outside to model KPIs and to view certain warehouse statistics. One key strength is our ecosystems, and I'm very happy here to work with Westernacher as one of our global partners. And not every warehouse is the same. And so one key strategy is also our APIs. We starting in 2019, we introduced the first public APIs, which you can find on the SAP API Business Hub. And you can leverage this in your projects. And we at SAP make sure the API is stable. We test this constantly. We keep the interface stable. So whenever you want to build add-ons, enhancements, use our APIs. We will continue with this release by release till we have all major business objects covered by APIs. Every release gets simplifications. We introduced several change documents in 2019. Change document is if a user changed something, we can now see when did the change, what was the old and the new value, which user. We still don't know when, why, but at least we trace all the changes here, and we do these simplifications year by year. And here we have customer influence cycles. We invite our implementation partners for solution test, and also Westernacher will join us in 2 weeks. This year remotely, and we get a lot of ideas and feedback, and we try to incorporate those year by year. We bundle it under simplifications. So let's take an outlook. A new innovations which we introduced end of last year, where we see now adoption in this year, is a new cloud service which we called Warehouse Insights. Warehouse Insight is a pure cloud product. It's not a WMS managing stocks on bin level. We built this to constantly optimize warehouse operations. Our starting scope is that we upload the warehouse layout from EWM into Warehouse Insights. We can now visualize your travel path. And we have capabilities to optimize order assignments. So we simulate based on open orders in a given interval, let's say every 15 minutes, which resource should best execute the work, and write back to EWM the optimized order assignment. In the last release in 2003, means in March, we have introduced a heat map. And the main benefit is you can keep the WMS core EWM really stable for years and get innovations via a cloud application, and this is here Warehouse Insight. So you don't need a certain EWM release to be able to connect with Warehouse Insights, as we deliver quarterly innovations on this area here. And I'm convinced we can spend a whole session on this. Maybe there's a chance later in the year. Outlook 2020, as you see, plan only, the red sticker. These are the topics which are currently in development. We are planning to release this with the 2020 release. The current ship to customer date is first week of October this year. And you can see some headlines. User experience, you can expect roundups in existing Fiori apps. We will also introduce new apps. We will introduce attachment handling. We will enhance batch management in our e-commerce returns app. And another big innovation bucket this year is integration. In quality management, in the last years, we have focused on inbound quality. This year, our use case is stock which is already in the warehouse and gets inspected maybe at the production line or by whatever event. And there is an object in quality management which is called the defect. I call it a ticket. So somebody detects there's something wrong with the stock, with the handling units, creates a defect, and with the follow-on processing, you can make decisions on the defect or do a deep dive analysis and start and take over the defect into a quality notification with all its capabilities, workflows, users, status, returns, processing, and so on, and deeply integrate this into EWM. For production operations and embedded, as we heard, we now bundle production consumptions, production receipts together with EWM postings, with the capability to really keep tracing about your handling units till they are being consumed. And we have a really tight integration in this release between production consumption, pre-planned HUs in production receiving. So we make it much more leaner, much faster to be able to handle future requirements here. All these titles here are just single bullet points, but behind this is a tight collaborations with the SAP teams of QM, with the SAP teams of handling unit. We are working on an overall handling unit monitor. Of course, we have handling units in the EWM monitor. And of course, there are handling units in the handling unit monitor. But with this release, we want to leverage a handling unit monitor covering handling units in EWM and outside EWM, end to end. Some customers started EWM journeys many years back. We introduced EWM in 26. And as we now focus our innovations on S/4HANA, with this release, we will enhance our migration tools and help you in moving over to S/4HANA. And to close the 2020, we will work more. We give you more analytics. We will give you analytics for warehouse waves, for warehouse inbound deliveries. With this release, we will introduce attachments to EWM business object. So take a picture of your truck and attach it to the EWM transportation unit before you close the load. Take a picture of your delivery document for your inbound documents and attach it to the inbound delivery. In the simplifications, we are including more than 40 customer improvements which we delivered based on a customer connection program. This is public. And now all these innovations are part of the new release. If you want to consume them before moving to 2020, you have to import SAP notes, sometimes with manual instructions. And with 2020, they are all in. For the mobile operations, we will introduce a so-called logging and tracing. So whatever the user did on the mobile UI, when did he scan or she? Was it the right or the wrong value? Did we get an exception? You are able to switch a trace on and help the user and see how to improve your process in the future. And to close the release was a production release. Last year we have introduced a distribution equipment, others call it a tugger train or route train. this release, we did some enhancements. We will introduce pre-allocated or missing stock, which is a new kind of cross-stocking, routing, receiving products directly to production or replenishment. And a big step for the automotive industry, we integrate the just-in-time supply to production to EWM, connected to waves, connected to missing parts, with several options to trigger the production supply based on JIT control cycles in this release. You will also find these on our newly introduced roadmaps. They will be introduced right now. Currently they are still on beta, so everything digital at SAP. Don't look for an old PDF, which is maybe outdated by now. Just take a look on our digital roadmaps and you will also see those areas there. With this, I'm done. Thank you, Westernacher, for having me. And my conclusion, we take a big focus, and we will take in the future, on integration and user experience, which is Fiori and SAP. We are strongly investing into EWM. And EWM is a strategic warehouse product for multiple use cases, whether it's production, distribution, or wholesale operations in the pharmaceutical industry. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jörg. That was fantastic. Great insights and some amazing topics in line. I think we're very excited to help you test this, bring it to the market, to our customers.
I'll take you by the word, Marco.
Yes, we can't wait to play around with that. So with that, we will conclude our session. In respect of the time, for the questions that you have posed, we will follow up with you individually. But I want to take the time again to thank everyone. Jörg for joining from Germany, our colleagues Mevin joining late in the night from Dubai, Pradeep and Chenchi here in the US with me. So thank you everyone for your contribution. I hope for the audience you got some interesting pointers. Feel free to reach out to us. As I said, any questions, we're open to respond, to answer, to deep dive a little bit into some of these topics. And then for the rest, I want to wish you a great day. Make sure to download our attachment. Have a look at our assessment that we also highlight here. Our Calibrate and Thrive assessment. In the current times of COVID-19, we want to do our part, and that's a free assessment that you can do with us. So make use of that. And with that, I want to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.